From Canada, Citizens Forum, where we look at the important issues of the day through a lens of democracy and media and try to figure out, how do we build a better country for ourselves? Hello, welcome to From Canada, Citizens Forum. It is Saturday, May the 31st, 2025. My name is Jack Etkin. I'm here with Ryder and Madinah Johri. This is news and current affairs from a Canadian perspective and with an underlying theme of democracy and media. I'm going to start off talking about what's happened since the federal election. In fact, since President Trump was elected and began to talk about tariffs, the entire theme in Canada has suddenly become, well, we don't have time to do anything. All we can do is more oil, more mining, more logging, more pipelines, and more fracking. That has been the message from all of our politicians, basically every provincial premier and the prime minister, who has said he wants Canada to now suddenly become an energy superpower. And is that where Canadians really want us to be going? Because at the same time as all these guys are talking about more oil, more gas, more fracking, more mining, the fires are already starting. So in Saskatchewan, in Manitoba, there are something like 15 or 16,000 people have already been evacuated. The town of Flin Flon, which is in northern Manitoba, is very close to a major fire. There's fires in Saskatchewan, there's fires in Alberta, and I don't know what's going on back east, but thousands and thousands of people are already on the move. The premier of Saskatchewan, who is Mr. Moe, is a firm supporter of more oil and more gas, but he just said a couple of days ago that we're in a situation like we've never seen before because of the fires in Saskatchewan. At the same time, Alberta separation has become a fairly major theme since the election, and in fact for the last couple of months, and that's because there is Alberta is being badly treated by the rest of Canada, and so of course we've got to have more oil and more gas because of what's happening in Alberta. So the line in this story they're telling us about Alberta wanting to separate from Canada, and Albertans do, a lot of Albertans do feel that way, and they feel that way because this is the story they're told by the media and the politicians. But we're not told that 4 years of record oil production, and nor are we told that Esso just announced a record profit for the first quarter of 2025. And at the same time as all of that is happening, we're also having job losses. So you can be sure that the job losses are very highly touted in Alberta through the media, but the record profits and the record production are not being touted. So what they're doing is they're making more money and they're cutting jobs and blaming it on the government. I think what Alberta has to be separated from are the oil companies, because if you can, Alberta charges some of the lowest royalties in the world, which means how much they charge for the oil that the companies take out of Alberta. And that never gets a mention, right? So, and to me, the question is, if Canadians, given honest information, want to move towards more oil, more mining, and more everything else, okay, but let's have a discussion. Let's find out what Canadians really want, because we are jeopardizing the future. Half of us are now going to get cancer. Most of us now have plastic in our brains, in our heart, in our blood, in all of our organs because of the way our society is being run. But that never gets a mention. They just tell us, we want more. You've got to have more. We're going to become an energy superpower. We have no time to even have environmental assessments anymore. We've got to move ahead. So, I mean, this is the direction our country is being moved in. And do we Canadians even have a voice in this? And if not, why not? So that's my first comment. And Norm, on to you.
Well, I was just going to say, following up a little bit on what you're saying, it'll lead into the rest. Lots of luck, Alberta, if you separate getting another pipeline through BC. It won't be in BC's national interest to build a pipeline for another country. So I'm just not sure. I mean, it's just one example. They're not thinking their whole separation thing through very clearly. And leading more into this whole discussion about more projects which will bring more CO2. Now, you and I disagree a bit on just climate change and CO2, but if when you see the governments are not taking CO2 production into account, I do have a hard time accepting their whole story about we have to reduce CO2 to save climate change, because they're not following through on what they're talking about. And that leads into my second thing about, I wasn't here last week. I was planning to take a trip on the Trans-Canada Trail. Now, first, with my bike. Now, first of all, the Trans-Canada Trail was built by BC taxpayer money, federal government taxpayer money, but because of the floods in 2021 and the Coquihalla area, much of it's been wiped out. And the government's not sure if they're going to rebuild that stretch. And I'll just do a quick screen share of a comment that I got from the Ministry of Environment when I asked them about rebuilding the Hope to Princeton stretch. And let's see where we're here. Yeah, here we are. I asked them about rebuilding the Trans-Canada Trail Hope to Princeton. And their response was really interesting. The decision to repair or not repair the Kettle Valley, which is another name for that stretch, has many implications. They go on potential costs, benefits, and opportunities. Well, they really don't seem interested in returning to a, shall we say, the Trans-Canada Trail. Now, that's that part that wasn't good. But in the Princeton area in particular, which is where I had to drive to start the Trans-Canada Trail, apparently there's been quite a bit of political discussion about allowing ATVs, in particular trail bikes, on the Trans-Canada Trail in that area. And it's because of the use of the trail bikes, which, first of all, destroy the environment. And if they're concerned about CO2, they should get trail bikes and any gas engine off the trails, and they're not needed there. But as I say, they tore it up so much that I literally could not ride the trail, that several times my bike flipped over at a very slow speed. Now, I've got a three-wheel bike that, believe it or not, they have a tendency to flip more in that situation. It flipped so violently one time when I was only riding it at about 5K or less, I thought it was going to do a whole 180 turn. And as I was out in a very isolated area, I thought this could get dangerous, so I came down. Now, this is the good part of the trip, that not only was Princeton quite helpful in where I could park my truck when I was going on the trip. I expected to be away for 2 weeks. I ran across a couple of guys, a guy and his brother-in-law from a place you may have heard of, Jack, Manitoba. But anyways, he was out. And they went down to their house. I had a drink of water, etc. Then they announced that they thought they'd go into town for lunch. And they put a trailer in the back of their car and took me into town for lunch, and they wouldn't let me pay for the lunch. Now, this is what I found in that trip, wherever I went. Basically, I would say people are more friendly now than they were before COVID. And I think I attribute that to, in a lot of these places, people are so tired of all the negative. When they get a chance to be cheerful and happy and friendly to people, they jump at the chance. When I've talked to other people, and that's very much the reaction a lot of people are getting, is that people are so done with, whether it's the Trump wars or the aftermath of COVID, or well, we can just go down the list of all the problems.
Yeah.
They're just done with it, and they want to get on with their life and be happy. And
yeah, the reality is that people are generally, pretty good and pretty friendly.
yeah, that was what, shall we say, was the big lesson on the trip, was just how nice people are now. And I really wouldn't have said that, I don't think, a few years ago.
Good to hear.
I think it's because we are facing the nasty people in our politician and in media, so we extend that to everybody else. Meanwhile, we forgot that we should converse with ordinary Canadian, and they are wonderful people. By far, the majority are wonderful people, caring, and want to share.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. They just want to get back to being a nice person, happy, getting on with their lives.
Mehdi, you wanted to talk, starting with British Columbia's Bill 15.
Yes, I think Bill 15, the British Columbia NDP so-called progressive government, and Bill 5 of Ontario government, Bill 5, which is the government over there is a conservative, pro-business government. They are doing the same thing. That's why people, I always said, if they have majority, it doesn't matter, NDP, liberal, conservative, they all serve corporate interests over public interests. The only time we get few things from the public from this government, when they are forming a minority government. And we see Bill 5, for example, is getting rid of, really putting aside environmental rules, the Endangered Species Act and other things, forget about protection of water, wildlife, and people health, and push the corporate agenda, the mining, without any hindrance, without any rules, a lawlessness that they are pushing in, all because they have suddenly this crisis of tariff and Mr. Trump. Before that, we have the crisis of housing. Before that, we had the crisis of pandemic. They love crisis because when they use the cover of crisis to push corporate agenda through. And at least in Ontario, I should say, the conservative government have some public hearing about Bill 5. In British Columbia, the progressive government have no such a thing. It's just pushed through, or late in the afternoon, in the evening, without and limiting the discussion of the bill in the legislature. They did everything to push this through. And the question is, why an NDP government do such a thing? Because they are puppets of the same corporate interests that all the other political...
Mehdi, can you just mention what Bill 15 does here in BC?
Bill 15 pushed the project that government thinks it's essential, which is mostly mining and oil and LNG and those type of things, pushed through without hindrance of environmental law. That's what they are doing. And in BC, one of the most opposition came from the First Nation group. We had the First Nation Leadership Council, which include the BC Assembly of First Nation Summit, and Union of BC Indian Chief. They all opposed it, and the government didn't back off. And my problem in particular is with two members of NDP, Joan Phillips, which is the wife of the Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of BC Union of Indian Chief, and Tamara Davidson, the North Coast Haida representative in the legislature, they both voted for this against the interest of the indigenous people. And I think they own the explanation to First Nation people at first and to people of British Columbia while they folded and voted for the corporate interest over public interest, over the indigenous sovereignty interest. We cannot, in both cases in Ontario and BC, we talk about indigenous rights. And King Charles came to the legislature last week and talked about unceded territory. What does unceded territory means? This means that these territories are not belong to Crown, to Canada, or to provinces. These areas belongs to a First Nation. And now we see suddenly both government of Alberta, government of Ontario and BC just forget about indigenous rights and push the corporate interest through. This happen all the time, regardless of, for last 50, 60 years, 100 years, they have done this. And now under the cover of they respect indigenous rights, they do the same again. They have no respect for indigenous rights. And as I said, the two members of NDP legislature, John Phillip and Tamara Davidson, which, by the way, she is the Minister of Environment and Parks for NDP government. They both voted and betrayed the interests of First Nation. I like to know why. They owe us. And first, they owe their own people, the First Nation, and then people of British Columbia, why they betrayed the rights of Aboriginal people.
And Mehdi, you also wanted to talk about what's going on in Gaza.
Should I go the next round? You want me to talk about it now?
Okay. Whatever you want. We can leave it for your the next comment. I'll just say that, in my opinion, the reason those two MLAs and all the rest of them, all the NDP MLAs who betrayed the people they betrayed a lot of the people who supported them. For every NDP MLA voted in support of Bill 15. And the reason they did it is they can't represent the people who voted them. Our MLAs and our MPs cannot represent us, who are supposed to be the citizens. Because if they do, and they go against what the party leadership wants, the party leadership has the power to completely end their career virtually immediately. And none of them want that. They want to have their wonderful little careers. And they're very happy to betray all the rest of us, totally and all the time, as long as they can keep their careers going. And our MLAs and our MPs they're supposed to be working for us, but they can't work for us because of the way things work in Canada. And that is a big problem.
But that's their choice. They choose their own interest over public interest, and that's their choice. And that shows the level of integrity and also the values they have.
Well, I was going to say that you're missing one very important point here, that the theater of when they do third reading in the legislature and the opposition votes against it and the government, of course, votes in favor, that's all theater and to play. And you've got to go back and look at in committee where they're discussing it, the bill line by line, if they feel like it, which is a whole different issue. And you'll see that the opposition there, when they could be raising objection, and this doesn't matter which party we're talking about, they're all on board they're getting along and basically having a good time. There's seldom a difficult question there. And this is what we have to start paying more attention to, is what is going on in committee. Now, I can tell you from talking to John Rustad personally, before the Conservative Party was anything in this recent go-round, I know he has very strong environmental concerns within him, but it's not what the party wants, and he's been trampled over. But we're going on against the NDP. Now, they're quite right. What they're doing is wrong. I'm not going to disagree there. But it doesn't matter which party is in there. They both do it. As you pointed out, the Conservative Party, who supposedly has the opposite view in Ontario, is doing the same thing. They really doesn't matter who's in. They will all do the same thing and take it down. This is the plan. Somehow we've got to get control of our MLAs to get them to do what we want, not what the corporate interest wants.
Mehdi, any final comment on that?
I think in terms of John Ross, that he was there when liberals were in power and said nothing about environmental protection. So I don't think he has an environmental background. They are all give lip service to good things, to environmental protection, to public health. But when they come to power, they have only one job: to serve corporate interests, especially if they have majority government. If this was a minority government, NDP could not pass this bill. But since it is a majority government, they push it through, no problem. So what we need to do really, to look at the electoral system and change it to a system that truly reflects public views. Only 43% voted for NDP, and now they act like a dictatorship. But if we had, and I don't think if the Conservatives were in power, they would do anything different. They would support wholeheartedly corporate interests over public interests.
Yes. And the NDP would vote against it.
Yeah, and then NDP would vote against it. It's just a game.
It's crazy.
So what we need a proportional representation. So there is never a majority government, but always a minority that they have to respect, the vast majority of the public point of view, and respect the other parties' point of view, especially, for example, in this case, Green, and not having a dictatorial power to push through corporate interests.
Norm, your second comment.
Yes, for quite a while I've been saying that 5G is a bust. That whole discussion, it hasn't delivered what they said it would. And well, there's a think tank in Washington that's, shall we say, agrees with you. I'll just bring up the screen for a bit here. Okay, this is a think tank. I can't see they have any political bias as such. And they recently published a paper, and I'll just go back and bring up the paper that they published a couple days ago. And in the press release, they go through, the title of the paper, New Phoenix Center study finds no evidence that 5G deployment has delivered promised economic benefits. And it goes through this, the press release, give you the link for that. It's now when we go to the actual paper itself, that they've highlighted a few findings. That my findings are straightforward, and there's no evidence that 5G deployment has improved employment, wages, business growth, personal income, or GDP, despite the industry sweeping promises. The data shows no measurable economic impact from 5G so far. Now to go down and take another look at one of the, now this is rather humorous what a U.S. senator is saying, and it goes on a little more that's not in that highlight, that they point out that Senator Kennedy's colorful characterization may be exaggerated, but not much of the whole wireless industry is exaggerating everything about 5G. And this is a statistical comparison looking at things. There we are. Now, they do feel that improvements to modern wireless technology may provide benefits to consumers, but use case evidence does not support the claims that these technologies fundamentally transform broader economic outcomes. Well, I'll just stop the screen share for a second. That's exactly what, in a way, I've been saying about 5G. It hasn't delivered, and what concerns me is, and it hasn't delivered actually for technical reasons that I don't think they've mastered yet, but they're talking about 6G, which supposedly, they haven't written the standards yet, but will supposedly be released in 2030. And it's, I think, going to fail by even a larger mark because there's technical problems they haven't, and they just can't solve by fancier equipment. Now, just thinking back on that paper, he says with no economic benefit. Well, I sort of disagree in a sense with him that there has been economic benefit for the telcos and the companies selling the cell phones. They've had an excuse to tell people to buy the next generation. Of course, when 6G hits the market, it doesn't even have to do anything different than 5G. They'll just call it 6G and they'll get people running out to buy the new cell phones, which that's all the program is a marketing ploy that the telcos have found that they can get people to spend more money.
Yeah, money is often, well, and the story I'm going to talk about is kind of the same. The question is it about health or is it about money? Here's a story from CBC. This is very interesting to me. It starts off saying, should childhood vaccinations be mandatory? Almost 70% of Canadians think so, according to a new poll. And the media has been pushing vaccinations for a long time. So it says online Angus Reid survey comes as measles cases climb across Canada. Angus Reid does not survey Canadians. Angus Reid, as a polling company, only surveys the people who are members of the Angus Reid Forum. And I joined the Angus Reid Forum because I wanted to see how they operate. And after a little while, they know what you think. So polls about the environment and polls about some things like vaccines, they don't ask me. And other people have said exactly the same things because they know I won't give the answers they want. So it's a very strange kind of polling company that Angus Reid is, which is why it's so popular. The media knows Angus Reid can always give the answers that they want. Now, maybe 70% of Canadians do think that maybe Angus Reid is right. I don't know. But it's only because we're not told the truth. And I just want to show once again, this is from Children's Health Defense, impacts of vaccines on mortality decline since 1900. I first saw this kind of a chart about 40 years ago in a friend's med school textbook. And here's one chart. This is for measles. It's called Mean Annual Death Rate from Measles in Children Under 15 Years of Age. You can see it starts in around 1850, and it's deaths per million, and it's quite high, quite high, quite high, quite high. But because of public health improvements, it began to drop shortly after World War I. And you can see it goes down and down and down and down. The measles virus was identified shortly after 1950, when the death rate was at virtually zero. And the vaccine had not even been invented yet, right? So telling us that vaccines have solved this problem is not exactly true. Here's pertussis, whooping cough. It's exactly the same. The vaccine, you go down, 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 down. The vaccine was developed here, and it continues to go down at the same rate, almost as if the vaccine had no impact. And this is scarlet fever, for which there is no vaccine. And you can see the death rate from scarlet fever was higher than measles or pertussis. There is no vaccine for it, and it goes down to zero as well at about the same time. And the same is true. I'm just going to show one more chart, because this is the price you pay for taking vaccines. Vaccines are not completely safe. There are side effects, and here are some of the side effects, if I can find them. Yes. Here it is. This is for fully vaccinated children, which is the red line, and unvaccinated children, which is the blue line. For severe allergies, 4 times as many for children who are fully vaccinated. For gastrointestinal disorders, I can't read the number clearly, but it looks like about 15 times as much gastrointestinal disorders for children who are fully vaccinated. Asthma is about 17 times as many cases for children who are fully vaccinated. Autism, 5 times as many cases for children who are fully vaccinated than those who have not been vaccinated. ADHD, approximately 20 times as many cases. And chronic ear infections, it looks like about 27 times. So the problem, or one problem, is that the media doesn't tell us this stuff. They only tell us get vaccinated. So who are they interested in? Are they interested in children's health, or are they interested in corporate profits? And this is a big problem, folks. I'm not saying you should get vaccinated or shouldn't. I'm not saying vaccines work or don't work. I'm not saying they're safe or not safe. But there is evidence that they're not safe, and there is evidence that they don't necessarily work. And yet that is never mentioned by our media, and that is a big, big problem. Mehdi, your last comment.
I wanted about what you said. I think the most important thing is we don't have an open discussion among scientists about this matter. All we need that they sit together in front of the public and let's discuss this matter. If, for example, this information that you give is not correct, we like to hear why it's not correct.
Exactly.
And the other side respond to their complaints. But that's not what we get. We get one-sided barrage of propaganda by the media and demonization of anybody that question the dominant narrative. That's the problem.
Mehdi, you want to talk about Gaza?
Go ahead.
No, you were going to talk about, sorry. No.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say a really good example of what's going on there is over the RFK's recent announcement about pregnant women and healthy children don't need the vaccine. And the CDC came back out the next day with a revamped website recommending the vaccine for pregnant women, and I think for healthy children. I'm not sure exactly what all. So at that level, you've got disagreement, and you have to wonder, well, no, you don't have to wonder. You know that it's the corporate profit driving the whole vaccine industry. And if Kennedy's wrong, there should be someone, they should be saying why they are recommending what he's not agreeing with. They're not. And that you can choose any vaccine, I think you'll get exactly the same.
And that insidious accusation of conspiracy theory, anything that anybody with, even I hear doctors, PhDs, very high-level researchers, when they say something against vaccine, they are being branded as conspiracy theorists, and that is not acceptable. We need a respectful dialogue with people with different point of views, and people will decide who they want to believe in that case.
Mehdi, you wanted to talk a bit about Gaza.
Yes, about it has been about more than 19 months of war, destruction, and it's not really a war. It's shooting fish in the barrel. The one side have all the killing machine instrument of killing people, and the other side is just hanging on. And if we say that, they say, oh, you are Hamas supporters. No, do you know who was Hamas supporter? Mr. Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu created the Israeli government, and Likud party created Hamas in order to create division among Palestinian people. That was the creation of Hamas in late 1980s, 87. And then even until recently, in last 4 or 5 years, Mr. Netanyahu was begging Qatar to give money to fund Hamas. So it was Mr. Netanyahu that really is a friend of Hamas, because then he can push his agenda of throwing Palestinians out of their land completely and annexing Gaza and West Bank. There is no Hamas in West Bank. Why are they going and killing people in West Bank? But one thing is what more important here is that the Western country has been supporting this genocide by sending arms to kill defenseless women and children. And since March 3rd, there has been no food going to Gaza. They are starving, women and children and elderlies, under the cover of we are fighting Hamas. This is genocide. And the Western country have no right to claim any moral ground when they support, when they enable this criminal government of Israel to massacre defenseless people. But another very important issue here is the shame of we people in Middle East, the Muslim and Arab countries. The role of these corrupt Arab rulers in support of Israel and in keeping quiet about this massacre, that has to be exposed, because without their collaboration with Israel, this genocide would not have been possible, regardless of how much Western country helping Israel. Let me give you 2 examples. One is oil. During these 19 months of genocide, Azerbaijan, a so-called Muslim country, sending oil through Turkey, another Muslim country that supposedly oppose Israel with their spewing nonsense every day. And then Mr. Erdogan's son has owned these tankers. So Mr. Erdogan's son is benefiting by sending the oil with his with his tankers to Israel, to the port of Ashdod. During the 19 months of genocide, they enable Israel to do what is doing. And none of these demonstrations in the West, these people that talk about Israel crimes, I had never heard they talk about it. Why? Another example is that when the Houthis, Yemenis Houthis, attacked the ship that were going through Red Sea to Israel with supplies from all around the world, and when they could not anymore do that because of Yemen attack, Houthis attack, what did the ship do? They went to United Arab Emirates. They took the supplies that were for Israel. They put them on the trucks and go through Saudi Arabia and Jordan to Israel. They all help. Did they send any food to the starving children of Gaza? No.
Mary,
and nobody talk about it.
Exactly. It's complete secret. I've never heard this before.
Yes.
Except from you.
I don't think without the help of this, when Israel bombed Iranian embassy in Damascus, and Iran wanted to retaliate and send few missiles, which was just for the show, to show the Israel that Iran can hit Israel if it's continue killing Iranian in embassies and Iranian scientists. So what's happened? Right away, Jordan and Saudi Arabia with their fighter jets went to the air and shoot down Iranian missile, defending Israel. And at the same time, they talk about, they oppose Israel, which is all lies. I am not here pushing to attack anybody, attack Israel here. I believe Jewish people in Israel have been deceived, have been brainwashed by a barrage of propaganda, Zionist propaganda. I think we need to bring people together in peace and harmony. We were living in peace and harmony, Jews, Muslim, Christian, in Middle East, until the Westerners show up, the colonists show up, and start creating division among people in order to plunder the resources of the Middle Eastern country. They are doing the same thing in Africa, in South and Central America, everywhere. So we know who is causing all these wars and profiting from it. But also we should talk about the corrupt Arab rulers that are enabling this genocide to continue.
Norm, any final comments?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on, we talk about, well, let's take Israel for an example, and Israel's doing this, Israel's doing that. Well, certainly the leaders are, but how many of the actual Israelis are truly in favor of a war? Now, I know they've been hit with a lot of propaganda. So we'll take in Canada that apparently I support Ukraine over Russia because that's what the government tells me I do. If they really want to know, why don't they have a referendum and let us choose, including just stop the war and not happen? And this goes for all the conflicts around the world. I don't need the government, which we know is run by corporate interests, of which the arms industry is very big in. We don't need them telling us what we think in any of these conflicts. As I say, most people would just as soon stop the war and not have it.
Yeah, and I'll agree with both of you.
We have to differentiate between the proxy leaders telling us what we think and what the people really think and really want.
Yeah, and I'll agree. The mass murder in Gaza it's unbelievable. It just goes on and on and on, almost as if Israel is trying to make itself the most hated place on earth. I mean, I assume that's the plan, since that's exactly what they're doing.
We have to also say that lots of wonderful Jewish people, Jewish person, are speaking very hard against this genocide. Jack, yourself, you are Jewish background. We have been friends. I am Muslim background. I'm atheist, but Muslim background. We have been friends for 35, 36 years, and we have always been respectful. We always like each other, companion as a friends and colleagues. There is a lots of Jews, Noam Chomsky, Norman Finkelstein, the Gabor Mata and his family, all they are survival of Holocaust, that they are speaking out against this genocide, and we should not fall for the propaganda and lies that we hear on CBC and all our media every day, and work together, break all these barriers, they break all these propaganda that they want us to be enemy of each other, and say, no, we refuse to be enemy. We want to be working together to stop wars and live in peace and harmony.
Maybe we can just end it with that. Norm, a final comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, following up on that I took a course with a Muslim fellow at Royal Roads. He was a very nice person. He and I got along great. And you know what his real concerns were? Roof over his head for his family and himself, food, a decent job when he finished the course.
Yeah.
He was just the same as the rest of us. I mean, that's really what all of us want out of life when you get right down to it. And people, we've been manipulated to think otherwise.
Mehdi and Norm, thank you both very much. And thanks to Ryan for doing all the technical work. And thank you, everybody, for watching this segment of From Canada, Citizens Forum.